Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where 100% of their food is 100% clean. Everything from their delicious soups, the broccoli cheddar, the vegetarian creamy tomato, and the bistro French onion soup, to the satisfying sandwiches, roasted turkey and avocado BLT, or steak and arugula sandwich. And don't forget about their fresh brewed coffee and their bottomless mug. Panera is a great place to meet friends or get some work done. That's where the bottomless mug comes in. It's all at Panera Bread. And now, enjoy the show. It's pub day for All Grown Up. I'm thrilled to, after many years of hosting Reading with Robin, Jami and I can't believe, have never had the pleasure of an interview. Jami Attenberg is the New York Times bestselling author of The Middlesteins, which was one of my favorite books ever, St. Maisie, Instant Love, The Kept Man, The Melting Season. All Grown Up is out now. It is heartbreakingly gorgeous, and just so excited to share this with the Reading with Robin audience. Welcome to the show, Jami.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on the show.
It's amazing that we have never had the pleasure. I met you briefly for 1 second at Book Expo when you were signing, and I think I just jumped the line and said, "Oh my God, hi!"
Line jumper.
I totally am a line jumper. Well, Book Expo is a crazy thing. Sometimes you look at the lines and you think, "Oh, I just get on here," and then you realize it wraps to the back of the Javits Center. And who wants to do that? Happy Pub Day. I mean, it's always exciting when a book comes out, and I remember tweeting pictures because my copy, my galley, has the I voted sticker. I was reading this on what turned out to be a very sad day.
Tragic day.
Yes, because I was posting pictures of this saying, "I'm with her." Follow Jami on Twitter, on Instagram, at jamiattenberg.com. I so enjoy your Twitter feed. Is that one of your favorite creative ways to express yourself in between everything else?
You know, everything is on a spectrum for me. All of it's on a creative spectrum. So, on one end of it is the long-term project, which is the novel, which has a really specific kind of slow roasting joy to it. Mm-hmm. And then the Twitter, my Twitter feed, or, my Facebook status update or something like that, is like it's like instant gratification. Oh, yeah. So I like them all. I like them both. I like kind of making people feel better, entertaining people on Twitter. I can do that, on a daily basis. And then the novel really takes so long to complete and to get published. And that's its own kind of joy. But I'm very interested in my just putting things out there that people can appreciate.
Well, I absolutely appreciate your Twitter feed. I get such a kick out of it, and especially when looping in other people that we all know and sort of getting that sense of connection. Now, you were just at AWP. What was that like? That's like one big live Twitter feed happening, I guess.
It is. Have you been before?
I haven't. I've been to other, events like that, but I really was trying to stay.
First.
Pardon? Oh, that was your first AWP. So how was that different than some of the other expos and trade shows and that sort of thing?
Well, I don't. The thing is that I didn't go to graduate school, so that's why I've never been to AWP, which is, for your listeners who don't know what it is, it's the Associated Writing Programs Conference. So it's like lots of people who go to graduate school, or educators, people who are writers. It's kind of, around these creative writing programs. And I went this year just because I have this book coming out, and I was asked to be on a panel, and I wanted to try it out. And it really was like the internet come to life. That was certainly part of it. Like, there were just people there that I never in a million years thought I would meet, because people come from all over the country for it. And it was very sweet, because when I go to Book Expo America, it's very much about the business. Mm-hmm. Like, it's all encompassing. It's about the publishers, and it's about big publishers, right? And it's about big sales, and it's about sometimes the technology that goes into it. And this is like small literary magazines, people making zines themselves, lots of poets, lots of poetry readings, and you walk through the conference, like the floor of the convention hall, and the first thing you think is, oh my God, people have just done so much work. Like you see the work rising, and then you think, oh my God, there's so much work here. Like it's a little overwhelming because there's so many little. I mean, there's big books too, but there's a lot of little books, and you can just there's like this big energy that comes off of it, and but it was great. I got to like see people that I really like, and but I also was. I didn't have a purpose for being there other than just to kind of hang out, and so I don't know if I would go back again, but I did have a good time.
Well, that is the thing. I mean, right, Book Expo, and for people who are tuning in, I'm speaking with Jami Attenberg. Her brand new book, All Grown Up, hits the shelves today. All of the conferences, festivals, are all a little different, and Book Expo is just, like you said, very big business market. It's just crazy. On my end of it, all of these sort of events for me are more the same. So that's probably a different takeaway for me because it's connecting with authors that I want to get to see, maybe doing an interview, seeing some of the new books that are out. And so it's very social. So I look at it, I guess, from a different perspective because, of course, as I was looking at the pictures thinking, oh, look who's there. And plus it was in D.C., at such a time. So I can only imagine, and I saw there was something going on in one of the hotels and a bunch of writers reading right in the lobby. And
yeah, there was a bunch of protests. The thing that I participated in was this I Dissent Do You event that Celeste Ng put together.
Okay.
That where we basically got all these postcards and we went around and we asked different people to write letters to their senators or whoever their local representatives were, and then we were going to mail it for them, and it had like the postcard looked kind of cool, and it said I Dissent on it, and
neat.
Yeah, it was neat. It was just like there were multiple things going on, and so it was just a small gesture. But it was sort of, we were kind of preaching to the converted. Like
exactly.
every single person I approached to hand a postcard to was like, oh, well, I've already written my senator 3 times this week, but sure, I'll do it again.
There is that. That is true.
Yeah.
But the hope, of course, is everybody sort of watching this and following the Twitter feeds or Instagram or checking out Facebook that you may get a few new ones. But, yes, that is generally the group that's there. And then also in talking about new books, and I was looking at some of the pictures of people of, what they were bringing home and the books that were coming out. And so just this idea also of being around the books and the poetry and, like you say, some of the smaller presses and just seeing how much work. And I do find they are overwhelming, some of these things. It's really, there's a decompression, I guess, after. After you leave, but also for you to be at one, and yours was, what was I saying, Success, Failure, and the Green-Eyed Monster, Thriving in Competitive Environment with your fellow writers. So what were some of the takeaways from that panel?
Well, now I'm trying to think about this. I think that we talked about who we were in competition with, and often it's, kind of competition with yourself, how the internet can play into that. So for some writers, it's, for me, like the worst thing that I can ever do is look at Goodreads reviews. I compare it to like cutting for authors. Like if we just really want to be self-destructive, we look at a Goodreads review. And so like part of it was like about, and watching, end of year lists, like there's always these like top 10 this or that. And like, if you're not on that, then you feel terrible. And then you're on Facebook and you notice everybody else who is on the list. And you think, why didn't I get on the list? And what am I doing in my life? And that kind of thing. So there's sort of like things that you can try to avoid and things that are unavoidable. And how do you work through it? And like, for me, how I work through it is, it's how I make my living. So I don't really, it's how I make a living, and also it's the thing that I love to do most in the world. And I just really genuinely love my art. And so, and then for other people on the panel, it was like, Mitchell Jackson was on the panel, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was kind of like, I wanted to represent my community and represent a voice that hadn't been heard before. There's just different reasons why you're writing, and I think that if you kind of let jealousy or envy or insecurity get in your way, then you're never going to get anything done. You always have to return to that core sensibility of why am I doing this? Why did I choose this path in my life?
interesting and to segue into All Grown Up. Andrea wants to do her art, and is she doing her art? And so how did you what was the nugget for this book, which really is, it's all the things I love about your writing, the way you just can look at the minutia of something, and I read it and think, yes, and just the way you pull it apart or make it so sparse and sparkling and so heartbreakingly real and hit things. But really, at the essence of the book is Andrea and her art, certainly, and her family and her relationships, and a lot of food. I felt like eating through much of this book. But can you talk a little bit about?
Don't eat a lot of steak.
Well, and I'm a vegetarian, so the steak did not speak to me, but like everything else did. A lot of the other stuff did. Just also the sense of where food plays into in the book, and certainly in our lives, and at moments that wouldn't always seem the most obvious, where there's room for a meal. But can you talk a little bit about Andrea and her push and pull with her art, and why that's so central to the book, really?
Sure. I mean, I wanted to write a book about what it's called All Grown Up. So it's about adulthood and what it means to be an adult. And so she's kind of been watching all these people around her who have achieved all of these very traditional milestones. Like she has a best friend who's getting married and has a baby, and people who are, have careers that they love. And she doesn't really love her career. She's a graphic designer at an advertising agency, but she had at one time been an artist and given it up. And like, she was sort of trying to figure out, she's closing in on 40, and she's like, am I an adult? What is it that makes me up if I'm not these things? Like, what are my, what are my milestones? And so I think part of it was, and you find out throughout the course of the book that she had once been, a talented artist, and there's reasons why she's not an artist anymore, and how she feels about art. And I think for sure for me, if I didn't have my art, I would be really devastated. And so I have a friend who said, even though Andrea is not me, like I have a friend who says this is like your worst nightmare book. Like in a way, even though it's not a nightmare, but like that, not being able to commit to the one, she can't really commit, seems to have a problem with committing to anything, but she, the thing that she really wishes probably deep down that she could commit to, but there's various reasons why she can't, is her art. And that probably would have been the thing that would have saved her all along. But she's also like, funny and smart and talented and loved and but also like, depressed and cranky and very human and flawed. And she's certainly doesn't lead a bad life at all if you really were to look at her life. But she doesn't know she doesn't know how to be happy necessarily, or she's trying to figure out what makes her happy. And so the book is in part about, and also it's in part about, I was just writing about what this, about it, is that it's kind of about figuring out everything, because there's a lot of time shifting in the book, and you see her when she's 13, and you see her when she's 26, and
I like the way it sort of goes back and forth like that. And
it's a very unconventional structure, because if you don't know what you're going to get each chapter. It sort of tells you what year it takes place, but
so cool.
Actually. But you don't.
I like that. Yeah.
But you don't know. If you were to make like a top 10 list of like the most important things that have ever happened to your entire life, it wouldn't be in chronological order. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like something that happened to you at the age of 6, might be less important than something that happened to you at the age of 18. So that sort of, talks to that. It's very true to the nature of the story. But anyway, I just wanted to, I really wanted her to like sort of think about all the things that made her who she is today, and then like so kind of that she could just move on from it.
It's a really interesting structure, and I did like knowing when I would finish a chapter, and it's a small book, but it's a meaty book. I kind of compare it. We were talking off air about my dog Ari, who's a corgi, and a corgi is like a little dog with just like a lot of dog packed into him. So I think if your book was a dog, it would be a corgi. It's a corgi of a book. I don't know.
It's a corgi of a book. That's funny.
It's a corgi of a book. But there is so much of and making the reader sort of think about, well, what does that mean? Because you've heard people say, well, I'm never growing up, or I'm not growing up, or sort of stopped at a certain age. but that is always shifting. And so in reading this book and on the phone, I'm speaking with Jami Attenberg, the author of All Grown Up, which is out today. Check out jamiattenberg.com. Find her on Twitter and just keep following her because hilarious. But it made me just think about all of those pieces of what's sort of expected. The mother-daughter dynamic I really enjoyed, and this book about being single that is being thrust upon Andrea.
Yeah.
And there are books like that, right, where everybody's saying, have you read? And, there's a lot of, obviously, bookish nods, and book people will like that part of this book on top of just this whole watching from the inside and outside and sort of upside down about her life and, all different times, a lot about her father and the relationship between her parents and what it was like growing up in her house and her relationship with her brother, sister-in-law, and a very sick child, and also the way the time frame shifts with that, because we sort of see them as a young couple before we know what's happening, but before they even know what's going to happen. So, what was it like to write that part? Because that was heartbreaking.
It's weird because I wrote like a couple of the chapters from the book, like probably about a year before I actually started writing the book. I wrote all of the chapters about her and her best friend, watching her friend get married and have a baby. And then I just kind of put it away. I didn't really want to, I was like, this is going to kind of, it's not, it was just going to, I just thought it was being kind of a pain in the ass. Like, not to write it, but just to like think about it and talk about it, because even, again, like, no, it's not me. It's like I was going to have to really think about adulthood in a way that I hadn't thought of it before. Mm-hmm. Because even when you aren't writing about yourself, you process, you have to process it and apply your own internal logic to it. And I was like, I don't know if so I sat on it for a year, but I had these, but I wanted to write a ghost story, which, someday maybe I will write a ghost story, but I did write a ghost story, about 100 pages of it. And that was where, there's this brother and his wife, and they have sadly have a terminally old child. That's sort of presented really early on in the book, so I'm not giving anything away. And the ghost story was surrounding them. And so it was all the same characters that I was using, but I just hadn't, I was really writing the book, even though I wasn't writing the exact book, but I was writing these characters out. And so I was kind of playing around with it. And it was all set in the house there's a house that's in the book, and it was set, that whole ghost story was set in that house. And so I kind of had, worked through a lot of it. So by the time I actually got to the writing of the book, the real book, I had done a lot of thinking about it. And, it is that thing that you really, as somebody who's single and doesn't have children myself, like I'm always just in awe and admiration of people who, tragically have children who are born really sick or who have special needs and so, like, that's a challenge that I've never had to really contend with. And I'm always just very admiring of people who do it. And again, it's kind of like that worst case scenario thing. You write, you write to a fear. You write to a fear. You write to something that seems sad or challenging, and you try to work your way through it and see how to make it not less sad, but just how to express empathy or compassion for it. I always say that, like, my characters, I either start with really loving them and then I write my way through to figuring out what's wrong with them, or I start with, like, really not liking them and I write my way through to loving them. There's always, like, these, like, challenges, specific challenges or complications that come out that I'm working through in the writing in one way or another.
So they really stay with you. So like you're saying, in writing these characters and this ghost story that you'd sort of put away, they must have been so much with you that when you sat down to write this, that they were in there, and I really never thought about the pieces that are written about and in speaking to authors, talking about, the story that sort of gets put away, or I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet, but that they're really still kind of haunting you.
Yeah, for sure.
In your writerly life.
Until you're done. They weren't done. I wasn't done with them. I mean, I wrote it and I was kind of just avoiding, dealing with it. And then when I finally sat down to write it, which was probably about a year later, I just wrote I wrote like 90 pages in like 3 weeks. Like, it just came really, really quickly, and I was like, I guess this is the thing that I'm doing next, even though
Isn't that cool? Sort of been that must have been like, I get it. That's coming there to write within that kind of a time frame. It must have just come.
it was exciting because it was, and I showed it to my agent. He was like, "This is your next book," and I was like, "All right."
Wow.
So
That's
yeah, it has felt good to, it is, as you said, a short book, but I felt like I was making lists of things that I wanted to talk about in this book that were.
There's so much in this book. It's a short book, but it's not a quick read. And I don't read anything necessarily quickly, and I, in fact, don't ever like when people describe. Somebody will. I'm always like on-call book person. I get texts all the time, or Facebook messages. I'm at an airport, or I need a quick read, and I never give an answer. I'm like, well, who do you like to read? Why do you want it to be quick? What are you looking for? Just never. I know what they're asking, obviously, but I like my readers to think a little bit more deeply about why they're going to spend 3 or 4 or 10 hours or 20 with something, and so I just would describe this as, like I said, just a gorgeous, witty, heartfelt, loving tribute to what things mean. It just really made me think about what a lot of things really kind of mean, and relationships, and what they could mean at the time, and where we move on from them. There's just a lot in here. And Marie Claire says, bravo to Attenberg, who, with hilarity and honesty, tells the story of an adult woman who wants what she wants, not what she's supposed to want. And I think that's another huge thing of what we're all told. What is the trajectory? What is the supposed trajectory, or the sense of explaining that which isn't on the path of which, and I don't know, everything's up for grabs anyway. So I think that that's shifting, but still, right? Is there that sense of explaining?
I was trying to create. I did not feel this character existed. I feel like a lot of when people write about somebody being single, they think of her as single but trying not to be single, or singleness is kind of a state, and then you get out of it, or And I was like, what if there was a character that didn't really care that she was single, and was fine with it, and never had wanted to ever get married, and occasionally was have romantic or sexual interactions, but really was more concerned with other things that were going on in her life, like her family and her friends, and what makes her happy. And I kept looking for that in film, and even in literature, and there always seemed to be this need for a romantic angle, or some sort of satisfying romantic side to it at the end or halfway through or something like that. And I wasn't seeing it, and I thought, and I wanted to, I think maybe when I was younger, if I'd had a character like that, it might have informed me in a different, I might have felt differently about myself or the world around me. And so
I love that. That you didn't see something that's out there. And I was actually having a conversation with 2 people who were writing a book about a topic that they sort of didn't see anything out there of, or that they wish there might have been when they were younger. And I think that that's so interesting, because now, of course, I'm trying to think, because they always do, right? There's that tendency to throw in that Hollywood, romantic end of it. And it's not something that it's not it is an option, and it doesn't mean it's because this didn't happen. This is a choice, same of, what was that anthology that people wrote about not wanting children? I forget. It was last year.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so people need to think about it's not always the path, and there are many paths. And I think that that's when a book comes out, then you've got discussion, and then you have more people talking about all sorts of options. So I think that's really cool. I'm thrilled. I remember when this came out, all I cared about was Jami Attenberg has a new book out. Yay. and it's such a treat. And people go to jamiattenberg.com. Before I let you go. Now, I have never seen, I have to say, an event page like your event page. I was looking at this and I thought, oh, cool. Starting off in Brooklyn, and you're reading with, you're doing the event with Alexandra Chi, who I love. That's your launch party. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Then I go on to look through March and April, and it reads as a who's who of the coolest writers to be with. How did you, I've never seen a book tour like this, Jami.
I know. I asked very nicely. I asked everyone to join me. I was like, because I've done, the thing is I've had my Milstein's came out in 2012, so we're at 2015, 17 now. So in 5 years, and I had another book in between.
Right.
So I had 3 books in 5 years. So I'm like really, really over myself. And so I just thought I don't have much interest in just standing up in front of a room by myself for like 45 minutes. And so I decided very deliberately to have a tour where I was just in conversation with people pretty much everywhere. There's a couple of places I'm not for a couple of reasons, but almost everywhere. And then I just started asking people in every city where I could, and that it would make sense. And they're all people that I really like, and because I've just toured so much and done festivals, so I've been able to. I mean, all these people I'm doing it with, I've met before and are friends with. So it's a really it's going to be a really exciting tour because I'm just guaranteed to have a good time.
I can see that. I just thought this was I was reading it, and as I was reading along, I'm like, okay, cool. Wait, and then I went through the whole list, and I said, and to know what I'm talking about, go to JamiAttenberg.com. Also find her on Facebook on her author page, on Instagram, and like I said, just follow Jami hourly on Twitter to see what's happening. This is just an amazing list. I'm going to try and go to the one in Boston, but you're with Jen Weiner, you're with Judy Blume. When I met her, I did curtsy, Cynthia Sweeney. I mean, just a veritable list of who's who. This is going to be the most fun tour ever, and I am so excited. It keeps going. All right, well, go to JamiAttenberg.com, and you'll see where Jami's going to be. And do not miss All Grown Up. And before I do let you go, a book that you'd like to recommend, something you've read recently or you have on your pile that you can't wait to get to.
Okay, well, it's not out yet, but I just read Courtney Sullivan's new book.
It's so good. Yes.
It's so good.
I love Courtney.
Saints for All Occasions. It's coming out in
end of May.
I think it's in May, yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's changed,
so
end of
good.
May.
And if you loved Maine, I really think you're going to love this book. It's just, she did a wonderful, I cried a couple times. She did a wonderful job with it. I was very proud. She's my friend, and she's actually one of my readers.
Yes, I saw that
readers.
You thanked her.
And so it was like that double joy of reading a book that I just really enjoyed. But then on top of that, I was so proud of my friend that she had written something really special. You can just see it. You can just see the kind of wisdom that comes off the page. It's great. It's lovely. It's a lovely book.
Could not wait after the engagements. I was I would email her from time to time, not wanting to be a nudge, yet wanting to know when the next book was coming out. So Saints for All Occasions comes out at the end of May. Courtney Sullivan, I agree. She's one of my absolute favorites. Adore her. And good. Well, you know what? I'm kind of glad you didn't mention one that I had to go put on my list to say, because you know what the list looked like. So, yes, Jami, this was such a pleasure. All the best. Enjoy this tour. It's All Grown Up. Jami Attenberg. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in Boston.
Thanks, Robin.